Hello. Before you go to sleep listening to our stories, we would be very happy if you could click the subscribe button, give us a like, and leave a quick comment below. Whether it's a thought about the story or just where you're watching from, we love hearing from you. Your support helps us bring these stories to more people, and we will make sure to respond to every comment. So, let's not wait another moment. Here is the story you were waiting for. Story 1. Why were the Vikings so feared? The Vikings, those indomitable seafarers from the rugged fjords and forests of what are now Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, etched a saga into history that still reverberates in the American imagination. From the late 8th century to the mid-11th century, roughly 793 to 1066 AD, these Norse adventurers embarked on voyages that shook medieval Europe to its core, leaving a legacy of fear, fascination, and transformation that stretched from the icy shores of Greenland to the distant markets of Constantinople, and, fleetingly, to the shores of North America. Known as the Viking Age, this era was defined by a relentless drive for expansion through raids that spread terror, trade networks that wove continents together, and colonies that reshaped cultures. The Vikings' fearsome reputation was no accident. It was forged in a crucible of brutal violence, ingenious technology, cultural clashes, and a psychological warfare that turned them into legends of chaos. For Americans, a people who celebrate the boldness of pioneers, the resilience of underdogs, and the ingenuity of explorers, the Viking story resonates deeply, blending raw power with a restless spirit that mirrors the nation's own history of forging new paths through uncharted frontiers. The Viking Age dawned with a thunderclap. The 793 AD raid on Lindisfarne, a tranquil monastery nestled on a windswept island off England's northeast coast. Imagine a serene morning, monks bent over illuminated manuscripts, their prayers mingling with the crash of waves when sleek longships slice through the mist. Within moments, Viking warriors swarm ashore, axes gleaming, plundering gold and silver relics, slaughtering monks and enslaving survivors. To the Christian world, this was no mere robbery, it was sacrilege, a violation of a sacred sanctuary believed to be under God's protection. For Americans, who cherish cultural landmarks like Independence Hall or the Lincoln Memorial, the Lindisfarne raid might evoke the gut-wrenching shock of a national symbol desecrated, an attack not just on lives but on the soul of a society. Monks' anguished chronicles spread the tale across Europe, painting the Vikings as pagans who mocked divine order, their brutality a sign of apocalyptic times. This single act cemented their image as harbingers of chaos, a reputation that would grow with every raid. What drove these northerners to abandon their icy homelands for such audacious campaigns? The answer lies in a confluence of pressures that turned Scandinavia into a pressure cooker of ambition and desperation. By the late 8th century, the Norse population was swelling, straining the region's meager resources. Scandinavia's rocky terrain and brutal winters yielded little arable land, leaving many young men, especially younger sons, with no inheritance, hungry for wealth and status. In a society where honor was currency, raiding offered a path to glory, much like the American frontiersman chasing fortune in the gold rush or the Wild West. Economic motives were equally potent. Europe's wealth, gold crosses, silver chalices, and jeweled reliquaries, sat in poorly defended monasteries and coastal towns ripe for plunder. Trade, while central to Viking prosperity, was throttled by powerful European kingdoms, making raiding a faster route to riches. Politically, Scandinavia was a fractured landscape of rival clans led by jarls, warrior chieftains who bolstered their authority through successful expeditions. The medieval warm period, a stretch of milder climate, eased navigation across stormy seas, while periodic harsh winters pushed Vikings to seek new lands for survival. These demographic, economic, political, and climatic factors ignited a wave of expansion that would reshape the medieval world. Viking society was no crude band of barbarians, despite the stereotype etched into American pop culture through films and TV shows. It was a complex hierarchical world of nobles, jarls, freemen, carls, and slaves, thralls, where courage and loyalty could elevate a warrior's status, echoing the American ideal of rising through merit. Honor was paramount. Betrayal was a stain worse than death. The Norse were master craftsmen, poets, and navigators, their culture a vibrant tapestry of exploration and storytelling. Their longships, known as drakars, were marvels of engineering. Sleek, clinker-built vessels with shallow drafts that could navigate rivers or cross oceans, powered by oars or sails. For Americans, these ships might recall the clipper ships of the 19th century, built for speed and trade across vast distances. Vikings were also traders, forging networks from the Baltic to Byzantium, bartering furs, amber, and slaves for silk, spices, and silver. Their settlements, from Dublin to Greenland, showcased a knack for colonization, blending with local cultures while leaving linguistic and genetic legacies. Religion was the heartbeat of Viking ferocity. Their pantheon, Odin, the cunning god of war and wisdom; Thor, the thunderous protector, wielding his hammer, Mjolnir; Loki, the shape-shifting trickster, infused their worldview with a reverence for nature's raw power. Death in battle was no tragedy, but a ticket to Valhalla, a warrior's paradise of eternal feasts and glorious fights. This belief made Vikings fearless, even reckless, in combat, as they sought eternal glory over mere survival. For Christian Europe, this pagan zeal was alien and terrifying. The Norse saw no sanctity in churches, viewing them as treasure troves rather than holy sites. When they torched monasteries or slaughtered priests, it was a cultural assault, a rejection of Christian values that deepened the existential dread they inspired. Americans, familiar with ideological clashes, whether Puritan struggles with native beliefs or Cold War tensions with communism, can grasp how this spiritual divide fueled fear. Monks, the scribes of the era, cast Vikings as Satan's instruments, their raids divine punishment for a sinful world, amplifying their legend through horrified chronicles. The Vikings' naval prowess was their greatest weapon. Longships with their dragon-headed prows were not just boats but instruments of terror, light yet sturdy, fast yet versatile. They could glide up shallow rivers to strike inland, bypassing coastal fortifications, or brave stormy seas to reach distant shores. Imagine a fleet materializing on the Mississippi, raiding a quiet Illinois town before vanishing. This mobility made resistance nearly impossible. Vikings struck at dawn or under cover of night, looting and burning with surgical precision before melting away. Unlike feudal Europe's lumbering armies bogged down by supply chains, Vikings were self-sufficient, their raids akin to modern special forces operations. Their unpredictability was paralyzing. Villages from Ireland to Spain lived in dread, never knowing when the next attack might come. Coastal communities fled inland, trade routes shifted, and monasteries fortified themselves, all driven by the spectre of Viking sails. This psychological warfare was as devastating as their blades, sowing a fear that reshaped medieval life. In combat, the Vikings were a force of nature. Their weapons, axes, swords, and round shields were both practical and symbolic. The Dane axe, a two-handed weapon, could cleave through armor and bone, while swords, often named and passed down as heirlooms, carried a warrior's honor. The shield wall, a tight formation of interlocked shields, was a disciplined tactic that overwhelmed foes. For Americans, this might evoke elite units like the Marines, trained for precision and impact. Vikings favored lightning raids over prolonged battles, striking hard and fast to maximize chaos. The 845 AD siege of Paris, where they sailed up the Seine to extort a massive ransom, showcased their audacity. Such brutality wasn't random, it was calculated to intimidate. By showing no mercy, Vikings forced towns to pay tribute, a medieval protection racket that enriched their coffers without a fight. The 793 Lindisfarne raid remained a touchstone, its desecration of a sacred site sending shockwaves through Christendom, much like the destruction of a cathedral would horrify modern Americans. Berserkers, the elite warriors of Norse legend, amplified this terror. Described as entering a frenzied state, immune to pain, howling like beasts, biting shields, they were human hurricanes. Whether fueled by ritual, drugs, or sheer adrenaline, their myth grew through terrified accounts. To medieval peasants, a berserker was a nightmare incarnate, capable of routing entire garrisons. For Americans, they might recall cinematic anti-heroes, think Mad Max or the Hulk, untamed and unstoppable. While some tales were likely exaggerated, the psychological impact was undeniable, sowing panic that crippled defenses before a blade was drawn. This blend of raw power and mythic aura made Vikings seem almost supernatural, a force beyond human reckoning. The fear they inspired was as much cultural as physical. To Christian Europe, Vikings were pagans who mocked divine order, their raids a spiritual assault. Monks' chronicles, laden with religious fervor, painted them as Satan's tools, their attacks divine punishment. These accounts, spread by word of mouth and manuscript, turned Vikings into boogeymen. Coastal towns lived in perpetual anxiety, much like Americans post 9/11, haunted by the specter of sudden attack. The Vikings' slave trade added to the horror. Captives were sold across Europe and the Middle East, tearing families apart. Villages withered as people fled inland, a disruption akin to the Great Migration or Dust Bowl, driven by an ever-present threat. The clash of Norse paganism and Christian piety deepened this dread. While Christians sought salvation through peace, Vikings glorified war, their gods rewarding bloodshed. This ideological chasm made reconciliation impossible, casting the Norse as existential foes. Yet the Vikings were no mere destroyers. Their trade networks were vast and sophisticated, linking Scandinavia to the Byzantine Empire and the Abbasid Caliphate via the Volga River. They bartered furs, walrus ivory, and slaves for silver, silk, and spices, showing a commercial savvy that Americans, with their history of trade-driven expansion, might admire. Their colonies, Dublin, York, Normandy, became thriving hubs, blending Norse and local cultures. In Iceland, they built a society from scratch governed by the Thing, a proto-democratic assembly that echoes America's town hall tradition. In Greenland, they survived harsh conditions, a testament to their resilience. Some Vikings served as Varangian guards in Constantinople, their discipline earning respect far from their barbaric image. This duality, raiders and builders, made them both feared and indispensable. Kings paid them to leave but also hired them as mercenaries, recognizing their skill. For Americans, this adaptability recalls the nation's own history of turning adversaries into allies, from post-revolutionary trade with Britain to modern corporate mergers. Women in Viking society were no mere bystanders. While men dominated raids, women like shield maidens, possibly legendary, possibly real, fought alongside them, as seen in sagas like Lagertha's Tale. Women managed farms, traded goods, and wielded influence in clan decisions, their status higher than in much of Christian Europe. This resonates with America's reverence for strong, independent women, from pioneer wives to modern trailblazers. Viking women's roles, from weaving intricate textiles to leading households, underscored the Norse's multifaceted culture, far beyond the warrior stereotype. The Vikings' brief foray into North America, at Vinland, likely Newfoundland, predated Columbus by 500 years. Around 1000 AD, Leif Erikson's expedition established a fleeting settlement, a tantalizing hint of Norse ambition. For Americans who celebrate explorers like Lewis and Clark or astronauts who reached the moon, this early venture strikes a chord. Archaeological finds like the Lanzo Meadows site confirm their presence, fueling fascination with their audacity. Yet Vinland's failure, due to harsh conditions and clashes with indigenous peoples, highlights the limits of their reach, a humbling parallel to America's own frontier setbacks. The Vikings' legacy in popular culture is where their story truly thrives for Americans. Hollywood has spun them into larger-than-life figures. Kirk Douglas's swagger in The Vikings 1958, the mythic Ragnar Lothbrok in the History Channel's Vikings, or Chris Hemsworth's Thor in Marvel's blockbusters. These portrayals, while often inaccurate, tap into America's love for rugged individualists who defy empires, echoing revolutionary heroes or Western outlaws. The Horned Helmet, a 19th-century opera fiction from Wagner's Ring Cycle, adorns everything from Halloween costumes to the Minnesota Vikings mascot, despite no archaeological basis. Games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and God of War weave Norse mythology into epic narratives, their gods and heroes resonating with a nation drawn to tales of rebellion and destiny. Norse runes, tattoos, and symbols permeate modern subcultures, from biker gangs to fantasy enthusiasts, reflecting a fascination with their raw, untamed aesthetic. The gap between history and myth is vast. Real Vikings were farmers, fishers, and traders as much as warriors. Their clothes were practical wool, not the leather-clad armor of TV. Their society valued law, poetry, and family as much as battle. Yet this romanticized image, braided beards, roaring battles, captures the American imagination, much like the mythologized cowboy or founding father. The Vikings' true genius was their ability to wield fear as a weapon, their unpredictability and brutality amplified by Christian scribes into a legend of apocalyptic terror. They were pioneers navigating uncharted waters to build new worlds, much like America's settlers. Their story, a blend of savagery and strategy, violence and vision, continues to fascinate because it mirrors the contradictions of human ambition, destructive yet creative, feared yet admired, a legacy as enduring as the seas they mastered. Story 2. What was the daily life of a Viking child like? In the rugged, windswept lands of Scandinavia, where the sea roared and the forests whispered ancient secrets, a Viking childhood unfolded as a vivid tapestry of learning, labor, and law. It was a life shaped by the harsh beauty of the Nordic world, where every child was molded from infancy to become a vital thread in the fabric of their community. Unlike the structured classrooms of modern America, the education of a Viking child was woven into the rhythm of daily life, practical, oral, and deeply rooted in the traditions of their people. From the moment they could toddle, children were immersed in a world of purpose where play was preparation, stories were lessons, and survival was a skill honed through observation and effort. This is the story of what it meant to grow up Viking, a journey through the trials, triumphs, and traditions that defined their youth in a world both brutal and enchanting. From their earliest days, Viking children learned by watching those around them, their small eyes tracking the movements of parents and elders with rapt attention. In a longhouse warmed by a crackling fire, a boy might sit at his father's knee, watching him sharpen a blade or mend a fishing net. The scent of pine smoke and damp wool filled the air as the father's calloused hands worked with practiced ease, demonstrating skills the boy would one day inherit. In the fields, boys followed their fathers to plow the rocky soil, learning to plant barley or herd stubborn goats. They watched as men hauled nets heavy with fish from the icy fjords, or returned from hunts with deer slung over their shoulders. These were not mere chores, but lessons in survival, etched into the boys' minds through repetition and example. Meanwhile, girls trailed their mothers, absorbing the intricate dance of domestic life. In the dim light of the longhouse, a girl might learn to spin wool into thread, her small fingers mimicking her mother's deft movements. She'd watch as her mother stirred a pot of barley porridge over the fire or wove cloth on a loom, the steady clack of the shuttle a rhythm as constant as the tides. These moments of observation were the cornerstone of a Viking child's education, teaching them that every task, no matter how small, was a step toward mastering their role in the clan. Play, too, was far from frivolous in the Viking world. It was a crucible for skills that would one day mean the difference between life and death. Boys clashed in the yard with swords carved from oak, their laughter mingling with the clatter of wood as they parried and struck. These mock battles were more than games. They were training for the shield wall, where strength and courage would be tested in earnest. Races across rocky hillsides or wrestling matches in the mud built endurance and camaraderie, forging bonds that would hold fast in the chaos of battle. For girls, play was no less purposeful. They cradled dolls made of rags or whittled wood, practicing the nurturing they'd one day provide for their own families. Miniature looms, crafted with care by a doting father or uncle, allowed young girls to weave tiny strips of cloth, their fingers learning the patience and precision required for the intricate textiles that clothed their people. These games were a mirror of adult life, a way for children to step into the roles they would one day inhabit, their laughter echoing with the weight of future responsibilities. The absence of formal schools did not mean a lack of learning. Viking education was a living, breathing thing, passed down through stories and skills shared in the glow of the hearth. Elders were the keepers of knowledge, their voices weaving tales of gods and heroes that captivated wide-eyed children. Around the fire, a grandmother might recount the saga of Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, her words painting vivid pictures of bravery and betrayal. These stories were not just entertainment, they were lessons in loyalty, cunning, and the values that held Viking society together. Laws, too, were learned by ear, recited in rhythmic chants that children memorized as easily as a song. In wealthier families, a boy might be taught to carve runes, the angular symbols etched into stone or wood that held the power of written words. These lessons often came from a traveling scribe or a learned relative who would guide the child's hand as they scratched out messages in the ancient script. For most, however, knowledge was practical: how to read the stars for navigation, how to mend a torn sail, or how to judge the ripeness of barley in the field. This oral tradition ensured that every child carried the wisdom of their ancestors, a legacy as vital as the tools they wielded. Religion and myth were the heartbeat of a Viking childhood. From the moment they could understand words, children were steeped in the tales of Odin, the one-eyed wanderer who traded wisdom for sacrifice; Thor, the thunder god whose hammer shook the skies; Loki, the trickster whose cunning was both admired and feared; and Freya, the goddess of love and war, whose beauty could sway gods and men alike. These stories were not distant fairy tales, but living truths woven into the fabric of daily life. Children joined their families at the blot, the sacred festivals where offerings of mead, blood, or grain were made to appease the gods. The air would hum with chants and the scent of burning herbs as the community gathered to honor the seasons or seek favor for a coming voyage. Even as toddlers, children felt the weight of these rituals, their small hands clutching wooden carvings of Thor's hammer as they watched the flickering flames of the sacrificial fire. These moments bound them to their people and their gods, teaching them that the world was alive with powers both seen and unseen. Clothing was a practical matter designed to withstand the harsh Nordic climate. Children wore tunics and trousers or dresses made of wool or linen, dyed in the earthy hues of madder root or woad. In winter, they bundled into cloaks lined with rabbit or fox fur, their breath clouding in the frigid air. These garments were miniature versions of adult attire, functional and unadorned, with no distinction between clothes for work or play. A boy might wear the same tunic while mending fences or racing his friends, the fabric patched and repatched until it was outgrown. Girls, too, wore practical dresses, their hems muddy from tending the hearth or gathering firewood. This simplicity reflected the Viking ethos. Nothing was wasted, and every item served a purpose. Yet there was pride in these clothes, often woven by a mother's hands, each stitch a testament to the care that bound the family together. Food was another shared experience, with children eating the same hearty fare as their parents. At the center of the longhouse table sat a steaming bowl of barley porridge, thickened with goat's milk and sweetened with a rare drizzle of honey. Rye bread, dense and chewy, was a staple, often paired with dried fish or a wedge of tangy cheese. Meat was a treat, reserved for feasts or the spoils of a successful hunt, its rich flavor savored by young and old alike. Children learned early to contribute to the family's sustenance, whether by milking goats, churning butter, or hauling baskets of fish from the shore. These tasks were not just chores but rites of passage, teaching children the value of the food that sustained them. A girl might spend hours grinding grain with a stone quern, her arms aching but her heart swelling with pride as her mother praised her efforts. A boy might return from fishing with a small cod, grinning as his father clapped him on the shoulder. Food was a bond, a reminder that survival was a collective effort. Work began early, with children as young as 5 or 6, taking on responsibilities that shaped them into capable adults. Boys joined their fathers in the fields, learning to drive oxen or repair a broken plough. They fed pigs, herded sheep, or gathered firewood, their small hands growing calloused from the labor. Girls, meanwhile, learned to keep the longhouse running, sweeping the packed earth floor, tending the fire, or spinning wool into thread. These tasks were not optional. They were the heartbeat of the household, and every child was expected to contribute. By 7, a boy might be trusted to drive a cart of hay to the barn, while a girl could prepare a simple meal of porridge or flatbread. This early immersion in work taught children resilience and resourcefulness, qualities that would serve them in the unpredictable world of raids, voyages, and long winters. For those living near the sea, the call of the waves was impossible to ignore. Boys in coastal villages learned to handle a boat almost as soon as they could walk. They started with small skiffs, rowing under their father's watchful eye, learning to read the currents and the wind. Fishing trips were their first taste of adventure, the thrill of hauling a wriggling cod from the depths mingling with the salt spray on their faces. As they grew, they joined short voyages along the coast, learning the art of navigation by stars and landmarks. The sea was both a provider and a teacher, its lessons etched in the blisters on their hands, and the stories of distant shores they heard from weathered sailors. Even girls in these communities felt the sea's influence, helping to mend nets or preserve fish, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the tides. Beyond the fields and the sea, children learned the crafts that sustained their communities. A boy might sit beside a carpenter, learning to shape wood into a sturdy beam or a delicate toy boat. Another might watch a blacksmith, mesmerized by the glow of molten iron as it was hammered into a blade. Girls learned to dye wool with plants, their fingers stained red with madder or blue with woad. Pottery, too, was a skill passed down, with children shaping clay into bowls or jars under their mother's guidance. These crafts were more than practical. They were a source of pride, a way for children to contribute to the household's wealth and reputation. A well-made pot or a finely woven cloth could be traded at market, its value a testament to the skill of the young hands that crafted it. At night, when the wind howled outside and the fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, families gathered to share stories. These were the moments that shaped a Viking child's soul. An elder might recount the tale of Ragnar Lothbrok, his voice rising and falling as he described the hero's battles and betrayals. Children listened, wide-eyed, as the stories painted pictures of courage, cunning, and the eternal struggle between gods and giants. These sagas were more than entertainment. They were a moral compass, teaching loyalty to kin, bravery in the face of danger, and respect for the gods. A boy might dream of wielding a sword like Ragnar, while a girl might imagine herself as Lagertha, fierce and unyielding. These stories bound the community together, linking each child to their ancestors and the values that defined their people. The Viking childhood was a preparation for adulthood, a journey toward becoming a warrior, farmer, navigator, or homemaker. Boys were groomed for the roles that would define them, wielding an axe in battle, steering a longship through stormy seas, or tending fields to feed their kin. Girls prepared for marriage and motherhood, learning to manage a household, weave cloth for trade, or even lead in their husband's absence. These roles were not rigid. A woman might take up a shield, and a man might tend the hearth, but the expectations were clear from childhood. Every lesson, every task was a step toward these destinies, a reminder that the survival of the clan depended on each member's strength and skill. The beginning of life was marked by a solemn ritual. When a child was born, they were presented to the head of the household, often the father, who held the power to accept or reject them. In harsh times, a weak or unwanted child might be left to the elements, a practice known as exposure. Those accepted were sprinkled with water in a ceremony reminiscent of a baptism, their place in the family sealed with the approval of the gods and the community. This moment was a child's first step into the world, a declaration that they were worthy of the clan's protection and resources. Toys and games brought moments of joy to this demanding life. A boy might whittle a small bow and arrow, practicing his aim on a makeshift target. A girl might cradle a doll, its wooden face smoothed by her father's knife. Spinning tops, carved boats, and board games like Nefertafel filled long winter evenings, their rules teaching strategy and patience. Archaeological finds reveal the care that went into these toys, each one a small work of art crafted by loving hands. These moments of play were a respite, a chance for children to dream and laugh, even as they honed the skills they'd need as adults. Yet childhood was not without its dangers. The Viking world was unforgiving, and mortality was a constant shadow. Disease could sweep through a village, claiming young lives before they had a chance to grow. The cold of winter was a relentless foe, creeping into bones despite the layers of fur and wool. Work, too, carried risks. Children could be injured by a falling axe or a runaway cart. In times of war or raids, entire families might be caught in the chaos, children witnessing horrors no one should endure. Some were even taken on expeditions, their small hands pressed into service as lookouts or helpers. These challenges forged a resilience in Viking children, a hardness that prepared them for the uncertainties of their world. By the age of 12 to 15, childhood gave way to adulthood with startling speed. Boys were deemed ready to join the ranks of warriors, their hands now steady enough to wield a real sword. They might sail on their first raid, their hearts pounding with fear and excitement as the long ship cut through the waves. Girls, too, crossed a threshold, often considered ready for marriage and the responsibilities of running a household. These transitions were marked by no grand ceremony, only the quiet acknowledgement that they were ready to take their place among the adults. For a boy, it might mean standing shoulder to shoulder with his father in a shield wall. For a girl, it might mean weaving her first full-sized cloak, its threads a symbol of her readiness to build a home. This was the Viking childhood, a life of learning through doing, of play that prepared, and of stories that inspired. It was a world where every child was a vital part of the clan, their small hands and eager minds shaped by the demands of survival and the richness of tradition. They grew up fast, their lives a blend of hardship and wonder, their days filled with the echoes of the sea, the warmth of the hearth, and the voices of their ancestors calling them to greatness. Story 3: Viking women, warriors, queens, and navigators. In the windswept fjords and rugged hills of Scandinavia, where the sea sang of adventure and the land whispered tales of survival, Viking women stood as pillars of strength, their lives a vibrant mosaic of power, resilience, and ingenuity. From roughly 793 to 1066 AD, during the storied Viking Age, these women defied the constraints of their time, carving out roles as warriors, queens, navigators, and guardians of tradition. Unlike many of their counterparts in medieval Europe, Viking women wielded a remarkable degree of autonomy, shaping their communities through leadership, labor, and law. Their stories, etched in sagas, runestones, and archaeological finds, reveal a society where women were not mere shadows behind men, but dynamic forces who fought, ruled, sailed, and wove the cultural fabric of their people. This is the tale of Viking women, a saga of courage and complexity that resonates across centuries, captivating the modern American imagination with its blend of grit, grace, and glory. In a world where survival demanded strength from all, Viking women enjoyed freedoms that set them apart from many of their contemporaries. They could own land, a right that gave them economic power and a voice in their communities. A woman might inherit her father's farm, its fields and livestock hers to manage, or claim property through marriage or divorce. Unlike in other cultures, where women were often bound to their husband's will, Viking women could initiate divorce, walking away from a marriage if their husband proved cruel, unfaithful, or unable to provide. This legal autonomy was no small thing. It meant a woman could stand before her community, head held high, and demand her rights. She could negotiate her own marriage contract, ensuring her dowry remained hers, a safeguard for her future. These rights were not universal. Class and region played a role, but they marked Viking society as one where women could wield influence, their voices carrying weight in the longhouse and beyond. Some women took this strength to the battlefield, earning the title of Skjaldmo, or Shield Maiden. These warrior women were not the norm, but their existence was no myth. Trained in the art of combat, they hefted swords and shields, their bodies honed for the chaos of war. Picture a young woman, her hair braided tightly, her grip firm on a blade as she trained alongside men in the yard, her breath visible in the cold Nordic air. The sagas sing of figures like Lagertha, whose prowess in battle made her a legend, her axe flashing as she fought beside her husband, Ragnar Lothbrok. Archaeological evidence supports these tales. The famous Birka grave in Sweden, once thought to hold a male warrior, revealed a woman buried with a sword, shield, and horse, her bones telling a story of martial honor. These discoveries have shattered old assumptions, proving that some Viking women were not just hearthkeepers, but warriors who faced death with the same courage as their male kin. The graves of these women speak volumes. Across Scandinavia, archaeologists have unearthed burials that challenge the image of a male-dominated warrior culture. In Birka, a woman lays surrounded by weapons, a sword, an axe, a spear, her grave goods signaling her status as a fighter. Horses, symbols of prestige, flanked her resting place, suggesting she was no ordinary woman but one of high rank, perhaps a leader in battle. Other graves, too, tell of women buried with tools of war, their skeletons showing signs of injuries consistent with combat. These finds are more than artifacts. They are a testament to the complexity of Viking society, where gender did not always dictate destiny. For an American audience accustomed to stories of women breaking barriers, these graves are a powerful reminder that Viking women were trailblazers in their own right, their legacy etched in stone and steel. Beyond the battlefield, some Viking women rose to the heights of power as queens or clan leaders. The sagas immortalize figures like Aud the Deep-Minded, a historical woman who, after her husband's death, led her family across the sea to settle in Iceland. Aud was no mere passenger. She captained her own ship, her keen mind navigating treacherous waters and negotiating peace with rival clans. Her story is one of leadership, her decisions shaping the future of a new land. Lagertha, too, whether wholly historical or partly legend, embodies this spirit, ruling as a queen and warrior whose name echoed through the ages. These women were not anomalies, but part of a tradition where women could inherit authority, especially in the absence of men. When a husband fell in battle or sailed on a long voyage, his wife might take the reins, governing the clan with a steady hand, her word as binding as any man's. At the heart of Viking society, women were the backbone of the economy. While men ventured on raids or trading expeditions, women managed the farms, their hands, guiding plows through rocky soil or tending herds of sheep and goats. They oversaw the production of wool, a cornerstone of Viking wealth, spinning it into thread and weaving it into cloth that was traded as far as Byzantium. Some women were artisans, crafting intricate jewelry or pottery, their creations fetching high prices at market. Others were healers, their knowledge of herbs and remedies saving lives in an age without hospitals. In coastal towns, women ran trading stalls, haggling with merchants from distant lands, their sharp minds ensuring the family's prosperity. This economic power was not just practical, it was a source of pride, a way for women to assert their worth in a society that valued contribution above all. Marriage was a partnership, and Viking women often had a say in their choice of husband. The sagas tell of women like Gudrid Thorbjarnardottir, who chose partners based on mutual respect and shared ambition. A woman could negotiate her dowry, a sum of money or goods that remained hers even in marriage, a safety net in case of divorce. If her husband proved unworthy, whether through cruelty, infidelity, or failure to provide, she could walk away, her head held high, and take her wealth with her. Divorce was not a scandal, but a right, formalized before witnesses, ensuring her dignity and security. This system empowered women to shape their own futures, a stark contrast to the rigid patriarchal norms of other medieval societies. Religion wove women into the spiritual fabric of Viking life. As guardians of tradition, they led rituals that bound their communities to the gods. The Völva, a seeress or priestess, was a figure of awe, her staff and chants invoking the will of Odin or Freyja. These women were not just spiritual leaders but advisors, their visions guiding warriors and kings. During the Blot, the seasonal festivals of sacrifice, women prepared offerings, mead, grain, or blood, ensuring the gods' favor for harvests or voyages. Even in everyday life, women taught their children the names of Thor, Loki, and Freyja, their voices carrying the myths that shaped Viking identity. These roles made women indispensable, their connection to the divine a source of power and respect. The sea called to Viking women as much as it did to men. They were not just passengers, but navigators and colonizers, their courage fueling the expansion of the Norse world. In Iceland, women like Aud led fleets to new shores, their leadership turning barren lands into thriving settlements. In Greenland, women endured brutal winters, their ingenuity ensuring survival in a harsh, new world. Some even sailed to Vinland, the fabled North American coast, where women like Gudrid helped establish camps, their hands building shelters and preserving food. These journeys were not just physical, but cultural, with women carrying the stories, skills, and traditions that rooted their people in new lands. When war or hardship struck, Viking women were the bedrock of their communities. With husbands away or dead, they became protectors, wielding authority over households and villages. A woman might rally her kin to defend against raiders, her voice cutting through the chaos to organize resistance. In times of famine, she rationed food, her foresight keeping starvation at bay. These moments of crisis revealed the depth of their resilience, their ability to adapt and lead when all seemed lost. For modern Americans, this image of women stepping into power resonates, echoing the strength of those who rise in the face of adversity. Education was another realm where women shone. As the keepers of oral tradition, they taught their children the sagas, epic tales of heroes, gods, and ancestors. Around the hearth, a mother's voice might recount the story of Sigurd, her words weaving lessons of courage and loyalty. She taught her daughters to spin wool and her sons to respect the gods, ensuring the Viking way of life endured. This role as educator was not passive, it was a deliberate act of cultural preservation, each story a thread in the tapestry of Norse identity. Clothing was a canvas for status and identity. Viking women wore long woolen dresses, their hems brushing the earth as they worked. Elaborate brooches of bronze or silver pinned their garments, each piece a marker of wealth or rank. High-status women adorned themselves with necklaces of amber or glass beads, their belts heavy with keys, symbolizing their authority over the household. These adornments were not mere vanity, but declarations of power, their craftsmanship, a testament to the wearer's place in society. Even in death, these items were buried with them, their graves a mirror of their lives. The role of mother and homemaker was demanding but central. Women raised children, teaching them to milk goats, weave cloth, or fish in the fjords. They preserved food for winter, salting fish or drying meat, their hands ensuring the family's survival through long, dark months. Yet this domestic work was not a diminishment, but a cornerstone of Viking life, each task a vital contribution to the clan's strength. A woman's ability to manage the hearth was as respected as a warrior's skill with a sword, her labor the foundation of the community. The sagas brim with women who were larger than life. Gudrid Thorbjarnardottir, who sailed to Vinland, was a pioneer whose courage rivaled any man's. Brynhild, the Valkyrie of legend, embodied the fierce spirit of Viking women, her story a blend of love, betrayal, and battle. These tales, whether true or embellished, reflect the reality of women who were not content to stand in the shadows. They were cunning, bold, and unafraid to shape their own destinies, their names carried through generations by the Scalds' songs. Even in the male-dominated world of Viking raids, women played a role. While few joined the shield wall, many accompanied their families on expeditions, their presence vital to the success of new settlements. They negotiated with foreign tribes, bartered for supplies, and built homes in unfamiliar lands. Their adaptability was key, turning temporary camps into permanent villages. In doing so, they helped forge the Viking legacy, their contributions as enduring as the longships that carried them. The legacy of Viking women is one of strength and versatility, a story that resonates today in books, films, and series like Vikings. They were not the submissive figures of stereotype, but warriors, leaders, and visionaries who shaped their world. From the Skjaldmø who fought with sword in hand, to the Volva who spoke with the gods, from the queens who ruled clans to the mothers who preserved sagas, Viking women were the heart of their society. Their lives, etched in rune stones and whispered in sagas, continue to inspire a testament to the power of women who dared to chart their own course in a world of storms and swords. Story 4: Viking Rituals: How They Said Goodbye to the Dead. In the shadowed halls of Viking longhouses where the flicker of firelight danced on timber walls, death was not an end but a doorway, a passage to realms of glory, shadow, or eternal feasting. The Vikings of the Norse world, from roughly 793 to 1066 AD, wove their beliefs about mortality into rituals that were as vibrant and complex as their seafaring lives. To them, death was a journey, its destination shaped by how one lived and died. A warrior felled in battle might ascend to Valhalla, Odin's Hall of Heroes, while others might find themselves in the quiet depths of Helheim or other spiritual realms. Their funerals were not somber affairs, but celebrations of honor filled with offerings, feasts, and rites that ensured the departed were remembered as they crossed into the afterlife. Among these rituals, the image of a flaming boat drifting into the sea captures the modern imagination, a symbol of Viking farewells that is both myth and rare truth. This is the story of how the Vikings said goodbye to their dead, a saga of fire, faith, and the eternal voyage beyond the horizon, crafted to resonate with an American audience captivated by the raw beauty of Norse tradition. Death held a central place in Viking culture, not as a final curtain, but as a transformative moment. The Norse saw life as a cycle, with death marking the soul's departure to another plane. A warrior who died with a sword in hand was destined for Valhalla, where Odin welcomed the brave to feast and fight until Ragnarok, the end of the world. A farmer or craftsman whose life was spent in toil rather than battle might journey to Helheim, a quieter realm ruled by the goddess Hel, where the dead lived in a shadowy echo of their earthly existence. Other destinations, like Freya's field of Folkvanga, offered a paradise for warriors, and others chosen by the goddess of love and war. The manner of death was a map to the afterlife, and the Vikings lived with this in mind, their courage in battle or steadfastness in life, a ticket to a worthy destination. This belief infused their rituals with purpose, each act a step to ensure the soul's safe passage and lasting honor. The afterlife was vivid in the Viking imagination, a tapestry of realms that reflected their values. Valhalla, perched in the golden heights of Asgard, was a warrior's dream, a vast hall where the fallen drank mead, feasted on boar, and honed their skills for the final battle. Odin, the Allfather, presided over this raucous paradise, his ravens circling as he chose the bravest for his army. Helheim, by contrast, was a place of stillness, a cold underworld where those who died of sickness, age, or misfortune dwelled under Hel's watchful eye. Neither heaven nor hell in the Christian sense, it was a neutral realm, neither punishment nor reward. Freya's Folkvanga offered another path, a field where half the slain warriors went, basking in her divine presence. Lesser-known realms like the halls of other gods or the misty shores of Niflheim rounded out this cosmology, each a destination shaped by the life and death of the departed. These beliefs were not abstract but lived truths, guiding the rituals that sent souls on their way. Funerals were grand affairs, celebrations that honored the dead and bound the living together. When a Viking died, their community gathered to mark the occasion with reverence and revelry. The longhouse buzzed with activity as kin prepared offerings, mead, bread, or slaughtered animals, placed beside the body to sustain the soul on its journey. Feasts followed, with tables laden with roasted meat and ale, the air thick with the scent of smoke and spices. Skalds, the poets of the Norse world, recited tales of the deceased's deeds, their voices rising over the clink of horns and the crackle of the hearth. These speeches were not mere eulogies, but declarations of legacy, ensuring the dead's name lived on in the memories of the clan. Rituals varied by status and region, but all shared a common thread. The dead were sent off with honor, their passage marked by the community's love and respect. For an American audience, these funerals evoked the spirit of a New Orleans jazz funeral, a blend of mourning and celebration, where loss is met with music and memory. Burial was a common rite, with bodies laid to rest in tombs or beneath earthen mounds. Ascendancy mound, signaling their importance. In coastal regions, some graves were shaped like ships, with stones outlining a vessel's form, a nod to the belief that boats carried souls to the afterlife. These practices reflected the Vikings' deep connection to their beliefs, their graves a bridge between worlds. Cremation was another sacred rite, especially for those of high status. The body was placed on a pyre of wood, often stacked high with logs to ensure a fierce blaze. Alongside the deceased went offerings, swords, jewelry, or even a favorite horse, burned to ash to serve the soul in the next life. The fire was a purifying force, its flames a beacon to guide the spirit onward. After the blaze died down, the ashes were gathered, sometimes placed in an urn or scattered to the wind, a final release of the body to the elements. The process was meticulous, with families ensuring every step honored the dead. Cremation was a dramatic farewell, its smoke rising like a prayer to the gods, a ritual that spoke of both loss and transcendence. The image of a flaming boat drifting out to sea is perhaps the most iconic Viking funeral in popular culture, immortalized in films and stories. But how much is truth and how much is legend? Historical accounts, like that of the 10th century traveller Ahmad ibn Fadlan, describe rare instances of such rites among the Roots, a Norse people in Eastern Europe. A chieftain's body was placed on a ship with offerings, set ablaze, and sent drifting into the water, a spectacle of fire and farewell. Yet, archaeologists caution that this was not the norm. Most Viking funerals involved burial or cremation on land, with boats used symbolically rather than literally. The flaming ship was a ceremonial flourish reserved for the elite and likely exaggerated in later tales. Its rarity only adds to its allure, a vivid symbol of Viking audacity and their bond with the sea, capturing the imagination of modern audiences who see it as the ultimate farewell. Boats were more than vessels, they were symbols of passage, a bridge to the afterlife. Many Vikings were buried within real ships, their timbers cradling the dead as if ready to sail to Valhalla or Helheim. The Oseberg ship, discovered in Norway, housed 2 women of high status, their grave filled with treasures and tools for the next world. Gokstad's ship burial, another marvel, held a warrior surrounded by weapons and provisions, his vessel a testament to his journey's importance. Even in simpler graves, small model boats or stone outlines mimicked this symbolism, ensuring the soul could navigate the spiritual seas. The boat was a sacred motif, its prow pointed toward eternity, a reflection of a people who lived and died by the tides. In the grandest funerals, sacrifice took a darker turn. Ibn Fadlan's account of a Rus chieftain's burial describes a chilling ritual. A slave girl chosen to accompany her master was ritually killed and burned alongside him. This practice, though rare, was a stark reminder of Viking beliefs in the afterlife's needs. The sacrificed, often volunteers from among the enslaved, were believed to serve the deceased in the next world, their deaths a grim honor. Such rituals, though shocking to modern sensibilities, were rooted in a worldview where death was a continuation, not an end, and where the powerful carried their retinue into eternity. These accounts, though debated for their accuracy, underscore the intensity of Viking devotion, to their dead. Women played a pivotal role in these rites, their presence a thread of spiritual power. The vulva, a seeress or priestess, led ceremonies with chants and rituals, her staff raised as she invoked the gods. Her visions bridged the mortal and divine, guiding the soul's path. In some cases, women of the household, wives or concubines, took part, either leading mourners or, in rare instances, joining the deceased in death. Ibn Fadlan's account notes a woman's ritual sacrifice, her role both tragic and sacred, a testament to her place in the clan's cosmology. Women's involvement, whether as leaders or participants, highlighted their spiritual authority, their voices shaping the farewell. Graves were treasure troves filled with objects to aid the dead. Warriors rested with swords, shields and spears, their tools of valor ready for Valhalla's battles. Women were buried with brooches, beads and spinning whorls, their crafts honored in death. Food, drink and even slaughtered animals, horses, dogs or hawks, were included, provisions for the afterlife's needs. In grand burials, entire ships or sledges joined the dead, their wood and iron a chariot for the journey. These goods were not mere possessions but offerings, each item a prayer for the soul's comfort and glory. Rune stones carved with angular runes stood as enduring memorials. These slabs, raised by families or communities, bore inscriptions of the dead's deeds, battles won, voyages taken, or lives well lived. In Sweden, the stones of Uppland tell of warriors who fell in distant lands or returned with riches. The runes were both tribute and talisman, ensuring the deceased's name echoed through time. For Vikings, to be remembered was to live on, and these stones were a promise kept, their words a bridge between worlds. Archaeological finds like the Oseberg and Gokstad ship burials reveal the grandeur of Viking farewells. Oseberg's ornate vessel, carved with swirling motifs, held two women, perhaps a queen and her attendant, surrounded by tapestries, a sledge, and cooking tools, their tomb a palace for the afterlife. Gokstad's warrior lay in a sturdy ship, his grave stocked with weapons and provisions, a testament to his status. These mounds, rising like hills over the Norwegian landscape, were not just graves, but monuments, their scale a mirror of the dead's power and the community's devotion. The gods loomed large in these rituals, their presence invoked to guide the soul. Odin was called upon for warriors bound for Valhalla, his wisdom ensuring their place. Freya welcomed others to Folkvanga, her grace a beacon for the chosen. Hel, stern and silent, awaited those destined for her realm, her name whispered in quieter rites. Offerings of mead or blood, poured onto the earth or pyre, were pleas for divine favor, ensuring the dead's journey was blessed. These invocations were the heartbeat of the funeral, tying the mortal to the eternal. As Christianity spread through Scandinavia, Viking rituals began to change. By the late Viking Age, crosses appeared on rune stones and burials grew simpler, reflecting Christian teachings of resurrection over Valhalla's feasts. Pagan pyres gave way to churchyard graves, and sacrifices faded as baptism took hold. Yet, traces of the old ways lingered. Rune stones still bore Thor's hammer alongside crosses, a nod to a fading faith. This transition was gradual, a blending of beliefs that mirrored the Vikings' adaptability, their rituals evolving as their world did. The legacy of Viking funerals is profound, their rituals a window into a people who saw death as a voyage, not a void. The flaming boat, though rare, burns bright in modern imagination, fueling films like The 13th Warrior and series like Vikings. The runestones, ship burials and sagas tell of a culture that honored its dead with fire, story and sacrifice. Their rites a reflection of a world where courage and memory were eternal. For Americans, these rituals resonate as a celebration of life through death, a reminder that even in loss, there is a story to be told, a saga that sails on. Story 5, Ragnarok, the end of the world in Viking mythology. In the shadowed heart of Norse mythology, where gods wielded thunder and giants loomed like mountains, the tale of Ragnarok stands as the ultimate saga, a cataclysmic clash of deises, monstros, and heroes facing their fated end. Ragnarok is not merely the end of the world, but a cosmic reckoning, a sequence of events foretold in whispers of prophecy, where the heavens quake, the earth burns, and the universe is reborn from its ashes. For the Vikings, whose lives were shaped by the harsh beauty of Scandinavia's fjords and forests, this was a story of inevitability, courage, and renewal, a narrative that spoke to their resilience and their belief in the eternal cycle of destruction and creation. To an American audience, Ragnarok is a gripping epic, a tale of gods like Odin and Thor battling monstrous forces in a showdown that echoes the drama of a Hollywood blockbuster, yet carries the weight of ancient wisdom. This is the story of Ragnarok, a saga of fire, fate, and the promise of a new dawn. The Vikings saw Ragnarok as more than a simple apocalypse. It was the culmination of a cosmic drama, a chain of events woven into the fabric of existence. The gods, despite their power, could not escape their doom, just as mortals could not flee death. Ragnarok was the twilight of the gods, a time when Asgard, the realm of the divine, would fall to chaos, its golden halls shattered by the forces of destruction. Yet, it was also a beginning, for from the ruins of the old world would rise a new one, green and vibrant, cleansed by fire and flood. This duality, end and rebirth, was central to the Viking worldview, a reflection of their lives spent battling storms, raids, and winters, only to see spring return. The saga of Ragnarok was a story of defiance, where gods and heroes faced their end with eyes wide open, their courage a beacon for a people who thrived in the face of hardship. The signs of Ragnarok were etched in prophecy, a litany of omens that heralded the world's unraveling. The first was the Fimbulwinter, a merciless winter that gripped the earth for 3 years without summer's relief. Snow blanketed Midgard, the realm of humans, in a relentless chill, crops withered, and famine spread like a plague. As resources dwindled, the bonds of kinship frayed, brothers turned on brothers, fathers against sons, their blades drawn in desperation. The sun and moon, those celestial guides, were swallowed by the wolves, Skjold and Hati, plunging the world into darkness. Stars fell from the sky, and the earth trembled, its mountains crumbling as the seas rose in fury. These were not mere disasters, but signals that the cosmic order was collapsing, the threads of fate snapping one by one. To a modern American, this imagery evokes the dread of a world spiraling out of control, yet the Vikings saw it as a call to face destiny with unyielding resolve. At the heart of this chaos stood Loki, the trickster god whose cunning turned to treachery. Once a friend to the gods, Loki's bitterness festered during his imprisonment, chained to a rock with a serpent's venom dripping onto his face. When Ragnarok dawned, his bonds shattered, and he emerged as the architect of Asgard's downfall. Loki rallied the forces of chaos, the frost giants of Jotunheim, the fire giants of Muspelheim, and his monstrous progeny to wage war on the gods. His betrayal was not just personal, but cosmic, a rejection of the order he once helped maintain. Picture Loki, his eyes gleaming with malice, standing at the helm of a ship carved from the nails of the dead, leading an army of giants across the seas to storm Asgard's gates. His role as the great betrayer resonates with modern audiences, a villain whose complexity mirrors the conflicted anti-heroes of today's stories. Among Loki's children, Fenrir, the monstrous wolf, loomed as a harbinger of doom. Born of Loki and the giantess Angerboda, Fenrir grew so vast and ferocious that the gods, fearing his power, bound him with a magical chain forged by dwarves. Yet, prophecy foretold his freedom at Ragnarok. When the time came, Fenrir broke his bonds, his jaws wide enough to swallow the sky. His rampage was unstoppable, his howls shaking the earth as he charged toward Vigrid, the plain where the final battle would unfold. There he faced Odin, the All-Father, in a duel that would seal the fate of gods and men. Fenrir's role as the Wolf of the Apocalypse is a chilling symbol of untamed chaos, a force that even the mightiest god could not conquer, gripping the imagination with its raw, primal terror. Equally fearsome was Jörmungandr, the world serpent, another of Loki's offspring. This colossal creature encircled Midgard, its coils gripping the earth as its tail rested in its own jaws. At Ragnarok, Jörmungandr rose from the sea, its scales gleaming like storm clouds, poisoning the air with its venomous breath. Its battle with Thor, the thunder god, was the stuff of legend, a clash of titans that shook the foundations of the world. Thor, hammer in hand, faced the serpent with unyielding courage, their struggle a tempest of lightning and venom. This duel, set against the backdrop of a crumbling cosmos, captures the Viking spirit of defiance, a hero standing firm against an impossible foe, a narrative that resonates with Americans who admire tales of grit and sacrifice. From the fiery realm of Muspelheim came Surtur, the giant whose sword blazed brighter than the sun. As the leader of the fire giants, Surtur was a force of pure destruction, his flames destined to consume the 9 worlds. When Ragnarok began, he marched across the rainbow bridge Bifrost, shattering it with his heat, his army of fire at his heels. In the final moments, Surtur's sword would set the world ablaze, its forests, mountains, and seas reduced to ash. His role was not one of malice, but of inevitability, a force of nature fulfilling the prophecy of destruction. For a modern audience, Surtur evokes the awe of a volcanic eruption, a reminder of nature's power to reshape the world in fire. The battleground for this cosmic war was Vigrid, a vast plain where fate would be decided. Here, the gods of Asgard, Odin, Thor, Freyr, and others, stood shoulder to shoulder with the Einherjar, the warriors of Valhalla who had trained for this day. Against them came the forces of chaos, Loki's army of giants, Fenrir's snarling maw, Jörmungandr's writhing coils, and Surtur's blazing host. The clash was cataclysmic, swords clashed, spears flew, and the earth split beneath the weight of divine and monstrous fury. The sky burned red, and the sea roared, swallowing the land as the gods fought to their last breath. Vigrid was more than a battlefield. It was the stage for the universe's final act, a place where heroism and doom intertwined in a spectacle that would captivate any audience with its sheer scale. Odin, the All-Father, led the charge, his spear, Gungnir, gleaming as he faced Fenrir. Clad in his golden helm, his one eye blazing with wisdom and defiance, Odin was the embodiment of leadership, a god who knew his fate yet fought to meet it. The battle was fierce but doomed. Fenrir's jaws closed around the All-Father, swallowing him whole, a moment that marked the fall of Asgard's heart. Yet, Odin's son Vidar avenged him, driving his sword into Fenrir's heart, a bittersweet triumph in the face of loss. This clash, steeped in tragedy, speaks to the Viking ethos of facing death head-on, a theme that resonates with modern tales of sacrifice for a greater cause. Thor's battle with Jörmungandr was no less epic. The thunder god, his hammer Mjolnir crackling with lightning, struck the serpent with blows that shook the heavens. the serpent's venom sprayed, its coils thrashing as Thor landed the killing blow, felling the beast that had haunted his dreams. But victory came at a cost. Thor staggered 9 steps, his strength sapped by Jörmungandr's poison, before collapsing, his hammer falling silent. This duel, a clash of raw power and mortal limits, is a gripping tale of heroism, its bitter-sweet end a reminder that even the mightiest can fall, a story that echoes in American narratives of brave last stands. On the battlefield, Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, faced Loki in a duel of opposites. Heimdall, with his golden armor, and Horn Gjallarhorn, was the guardian of order, his senses sharp enough to hear grass grow. Loki, sly and unpredictable, was chaos incarnate. Their fight was a dance of contrasts, blade against blade, until both fell, their lives extinguished in a mutual strike. This confrontation, a clash of ideals as much as warriors, adds a layer of depth to Ragnarok, a reminder that even in the end, loyalty and betrayal are locked in eternal struggle. Yet Ragnarok was not the end. From the ashes and floodwaters rose a new world, green and fertile, its skies clear of smoke. The earth emerged from the sea, its fields blooming with life, a testament to the cycle of renewal. The gods who survived, Vidar, Vali, and others, gathered in the new Asgard, their halls rebuilt in sunlight. Balder, the god of light, returned from Helheim, his radiance a symbol of hope. With him came Hoda, his brother, their reconciliation a sign of peace. 2 humans, Lif and Lifthrasir, emerged from a hidden grove, their survival ensuring humanity's rebirth. This new dawn was not just a reset, but a promise, a world born from the courage of those who faced the end. The survivors carried the seeds of a new era. Balder, beloved by all, brought light to the darkened world, his return a beacon of renewal. Lif and Lifthrasir, sheltered in the world tree Yggdrasil, repopulated the earth, their descendants destined to thrive in the cleansed land. The gods, now fewer, ruled with wisdom, their battles a memory, but their legacy enduring. This rebirth is a powerful symbol, a reminder that even the greatest destruction gives way to new beginnings, a theme that resonates with American stories of resilience after catastrophe. Ragnarok's deeper meaning lies in its symbolism. It is a metaphor for the cycles of nature, winter's death giving way to spring's life, destruction paving the path for creation. The Vikings, living in a world of harsh winters and fleeting summers, saw change as inevitable, a force to be met with courage rather than fear. Ragnarok was a mirror of their lives, where every battle, every loss, was a step toward renewal. For modern audiences, this resonates as a universal truth, a reminder that endings are beginnings, a cycle as old as time itself. The story of Ragnarok comes to us through ancient texts, primarily the Edda Poetica, a collection of old Norse poems, and the Edda Emprosa, penned by the Icelandic scholar Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century. These works, blending myth and history, preserve the vivid imagery of the Viking imagination, wolves devouring the sun, gods falling in battle, and a world reborn. The Völuspá, a poem within the Edda Poetica, is the most detailed account, its verses sung by a seeress who foretells the cosmos's fate. These texts are not just stories but cultural treasures, their words carrying the weight of a people's beliefs across centuries. Today, Ragnarok lives on in popular culture, its epic scope fueling films, series, and games. Marvel's Thor. Ragnarok reimagines the tale with cinematic flair, blending humor and heroism as Thor battles to save Asgard. God of War, Ragnarok casts players into the chaos of Vigrid, wielding Kratos' axe against mythic foes. These adaptations, while taking liberties, capture the raw energy of the original saga, its themes of fate and renewal striking a chord with modern audiences. From comic books to video games, Ragnarok remains a story of power and possibility, a testament to the enduring allure of Viking mythology. Ragnarok is more than a myth. It is a saga of courage, sacrifice, and rebirth, a tale that speaks to the human spirit's ability to face the end and find hope in the aftermath. For the Vikings, it was a prophecy that shaped their lives, a reminder to live boldly in the shadow of fate. For us, it is a story that thrills and inspires, its echoes ringing through the ages, a call to stand tall against the storms of life and greet the dawn that follows. Wow, you're still with us and wide awake. Nice work. Before you head off, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. Tell us where you're listening from, what you loved about this story, or even pitch an idea for our next adventure. Your comments keep our fire burning and help us share these tales with more folks, and we promise to read and respond to every single one. That's a wrap for this story, but if you're not ready to call it a night and want to keep exploring, check out the video popping up on your screen now. Catch you there. Until next time.